A house is made up of lots of paper, legal and physical issues. Chapter 12, Leasing Property. Review questions and answers. Expect a few exam questions that deal with recognizing different types of lease and some of the basic terminology. Question number 1. A retail store tenant pays $3,000 a month rent plus a portion of gross sales. This rental arrangement is most likely A. a term lease, B. a net lease, C. an index lease, a D. a percentage lease. Correct answer is D. a percentage lease. A percentage lease requires payment of a base rent plus some portion of the income of the business occupying the space. Question number 2. A tenant A moves out of an apartment 6 months before the end of the lease. Tenant B moves in and pays rent to tenant A for the remainder of the lease. Tenant B is A. an assignee, B. an assignor, C. subleases, D. sublessor. Correct answer is C. Sublease E. Subleasee. The key is the word is tenant B pays rent to tenant A and not to the landlord. When you assign a lease, the new tenant takes over the lease and pays rent to the landlord. This isn't the case in this question. Question number 3. A landlord refuses to repair a broken furnace in an apartment building in the middle of a winter. The situation may result in A. actual eviction, B. constructive eviction, C. abandonment, D. condemnation. Correct answer is B. constructive eviction. Focus on this type of eviction here. When a tenant leaves as a result of the landlord creating circumstances by which the unit is uninhabitable, constructive eviction has occurred. Actual evictions is usually a result of the landlord taking certain actions against the tenant for violating the terms of the lease. Question number 4. Can a new owner force a tenant to renegotiate an existing lease when he takes ownership of the property? A. Yes, if the lease has a purchase option in it. B. Yes, if the lease has a sales clause. C. Yes, under any circumstances. D. No, under no circumstances. Correct answer is B. Yes, if the lease has a sales clause. The only circumstance under which the situation occurs is in the inclusion of sales clause in the lease. Otherwise, the lease survives the sale of the property. Question number 5. A tenant refuses to leave an apartment after the expiration of the lease. The landlord continues to accept the tenant's rent. The tenant may be said to have A. a tenancy at law, B. a tenancy at sufferance, or C. a tenancy by the entirety, or D. periodic tenancy. Correct answer is D. periodic tenancy. A tenancy in sufferance would have been created if the tenant stayed without the landlord's permission. Question number 6. A net lease requires a tenant to pay A. all or some of the building expenses, B. all of the building expenses including the mortgage payment, C. none of the building expenses, D. a percentage of the income earned by the tenant business. The correct answer. A. all or some of the building expenses. A tenant never takes percentage payment or makes a mortgage payment. Correct answer is A. A tenant never has to make A mortgage payment. Paying none of the building expenses is the opposite of the correct answer. A percentage payment is a trait of the percentage lease. Question number 7. The principal difference between tenancy at will and tenancy at sufferance is A. The term of the lease, B. Expenses paid, C. Whether rent is paid in arrears or in advance, D. Landlord's consent. Correct answer is D. The landlord's consent. In tenancy at will, landlord allows the tenant to stay in the premises, but there is no definite period of time when the arrangement will expire. A tenancy at sufferance is the tenant is staying against the landlord's will. Question number 8. A typical apartment lease with the beginning and ending date is A. An estate for years, B. A periodic estate, C. A net lease, D. A percentage lease. Correct answer is A. An estate for years. This is the definitional question. A typical apartment lease has a beginning and ending date, but it isn't automatically renewed for period to period, ruling out a specific periodic state. It also tends to be gross, not net or percentage. Question number 9. The landlord's interest in a lease is called A. A leasehold interest, B. Lease fee interest, C. Gross lease interest, D. Possessory interest. Correct answer is B. The landlord owns the fee of the leased fee interest. The landlord owns the fee of the property and therefore has a lease fee interest. The tenant holds a lease and therefore has a leasehold interest. Question number 10. A tenant remains in possession of a rented house after the bank has sold the property through foreclosure for non-payment of the mortgage. The bank wants to evict the tenant. The tenant has A. A tenancy at will, B. A tenancy at sufferance, C. A lawful occupancy, D. Periodic tenancy. Correct answer is B. A tenancy at sufferance. The key is consent. If the landlord, the bank in this case, wants you out but you stay, it's a tenancy at sufferance. And that was part 4. A house is made of a lot of papers and legal and physical issues. Chapter 12, Leasing Property. Question and answers. Thank you.